But I'm always amazed about how circumstances in a given week somehow correlate with my sermon topic. Sort of synchronicity of the universe, I would say. Maybe not logical, but it does happen all too often for me to believe in coincidence. Like, I did not know Catherine was even going to be talking about a pollinator garden when I chose the book about the bee tree. So some of those things just happen coincidentally. This week I am speaking about truth and how we come to know it and how we recognize it, or even whether there even is such a thing. And two events happened this week that will help me express that thought. Now, the first came in the most simple example and blast on to the news and Twitter sphere, which I'm sure most of you have read, the dress. Okay? Right? So, for those who can see, the middle dress there, how many of you see yellow and gold? White and gold. Right? White and gold. Okay, how many of you see blue and black on the middle one? On the middle one. Okay, so I didn't know how it would work because it's a picture of a picture, but as was on the news all week, there was a picture of this white, to me it looked like a white and gold dress, and my wife saw it as blue and black, and I was like, what are you talking about? It's white and gold, you know, and so, yeah, how this happens, it's interesting to think about how we perceive things, and if you just give me 1 minute, I just want to go to this, something else here that I pulled up. And it's the same picture. I mean, this is just a white, or sort of like bluish white and yellow. And it's all about the brightness that we let into our eyes. So you see here, as I move the brightness down, it becomes very clearly blue and black. If you move it farther with more brightness, it looks more yellow and either light blue or white. So it really depends on how you see things. So let me just go there. Give me 1 second. Okay. So I just thought it was interesting. It's a simple example, I know, but imagine thinking about that for sort of the rest of our life in regard to this, how we perceive things, right? To some of us it looks one way, to another one of us it looks another way. Throughout history, philosophers and religions have imagined that there are eternal truths that we cannot perceive, but may be innate. I mean, there was one right answer there. We know it was a blue and black dress, right? But how different people perceive things, it's not always the same, and it's the same in all things in life. So I think about just like the Pythagorean theorem, let's say, right? It may be undiscovered or unknown by an individual, but it is a universal truth waiting to be perceived. I think best Thomas Merton, the Christian mystic, said, and I quote, "There is in all visible things an invisible fecundity," that's my word for the day, a sort of richness, a dimmed light, a meek namelessness, a hidden wholeness. This mysterious unity and integrity is wisdom and mother to all. There is in all things an inexhaustible sweetness and purity, a silence that is a fountain of action and joy. It rises up in wordless gentleness and flows out from the unseen roots of all created beings. End quote. It is this feeling that we get, that spark of imagination that points us in a direction, an intuitive feeling that we are heading in the right direction. There is an inexpressible feeling of calm and centeredness when we know we are in its presence. And often it is inexpressible. And the inexpressible is made even more difficult because we all come from different backgrounds and circumstances and cultures, and we have unique ways of expressing ourselves. So how we communicate our truth becomes problematic in the world. I can think of no better example of this in the character of Spock from the television movie Star Trek. I was reminded of this due sadly, to the death this week of Leonard Nimoy, the actor who portrayed Spock in the Star Trek series and movies. He was a logically thinking character, and it gave him a very narrow view, actually, of how truth is expressed. And it often showed the limitations in being able to understand others and others' cultures' expression of truth with one another. And so I thought I would share this, just a short video of some of Spock's troubles.
Mr. Spock, are you all right?
Yes, I believe no permanent damage was done.
What happened?
The occipital area of my head seems to have impacted with the arm of the chair.
No, Mr. Spock, I mean, what happened to us?
That we have yet to ascertain.
Lincoln died 3 centuries ago on a planet hundreds of light years away.
More that direction, Engineer.
Thank you.
Mr. Scott, there was no deity involved. It was my cross-circuiting 2B that recovered them.
How close are we down to the nearest Klingon outpost if we continue on our present course?
1 parsec, sir. Close enough to smell the...
That is illogical, Ensign. Odors cannot travel through the vacuum of space.
Opportunity? Now listen, Spock, you may be a wonderful science officer, but believe me, you couldn't sell fake patents to your mother.
I fail to understand why I should care to induce my mother to purchase falsified patents. Can you give me more, babe?
Aye, sir. And maybe a wee bit more. I'll sit on a warp engine myself and melt.
That position, Mr. Scott, would not only be unavailing, but also undignified.
Hey, you better come on back down. Franco's put the bag on your captain.
Why would he put a bag on our captain?
Kidnapped him, you dope.
You realize that the aim will, of course, be for a crew.
I don't care if you hit the broadside of a barn. Just hurry, please.
Captain, why should I aim at such a structure?
Come on, Spock. Just get on with the job.
So, it just goes to show, from one culture to another, there can be easily misunderstandings of what is said. Even though each can be correct in their own way of discussing something, it cannot always be understood by the other person. The Vulcan salute, which I cannot do. Is there anybody out there who can do the Vulcan salute? Oh, yeah, there's wow, a lot of you. Holy cow. So, it's very interesting. It is actually a hand signal for a Jewish blessing that some believe signifies the presence of God. In the Orthodox Jewish tradition, which Leonard Nimoy was raised in, this was usually done by the priests with their heads down and, their heads covered with a kippah or a shawl or something like a stole. Now, though, you can see this here's a temple actually in, I think, Europe somewhere from many hundreds of years ago that has used that signal. So now, though, I want you to think about how our society has changed, that this blessing that we now give, not with our heads down, but with our heads up, our hands up, and it's given throughout the world face to face. Just a simple blessing of live long and prosper. May we all have that blessing, and may we all give that blessing to others. When someone is giving an oath in court, right, what do they say? Right? I swear that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. To not only understand your own truth, but to understand the whole truth really creates a much higher criteria. Through being open to others' perceptions, we may understand why they see the world differently than we do. We see this in our social justice work, particularly our racial justice work. Often, our perception of what the world is like for ourselves, we often tend to project out onto other people. But those who come from different backgrounds, different socioeconomic backgrounds or classes, whether rich, middle, or poor, or a different race, gender, or sexual orientation, may have very different perceptions of reality than how we have experienced it. Or how maybe they also perceive us may be very different. You know, it's not always possible to walk in another person's shoes. You know, we often use that phrase, but it's very hard to do. It's hard enough to walk in our own shoes sometimes, you know. So what is required then is trust, compassion, and courage. And I ask you to think about that. Think about how many times that other people's perception of you differed from your own perception of yourself. And if we truly believe we are part of something larger than ourselves, part of the wholeness of existence, then can we ever truly know ourselves, except as part of that wholeness? And if so, then it is only by experiences in the context of that larger existence that we can gain wisdom about ourselves and the world. The world actually becomes a mirror for our soul. The philosopher William James said, and I quote, "Truth happens to an idea. It becomes true. It is made true by events," end quote. An idea by itself, right, is just meaningless unless it is tested in the world and shown to be true. And you know, I think this is similar when I think about sort of the scientific method, right? You know, it starts with asking a question and doing research and constructing a hypothesis, and then testing that hypothesis with experimentation and analyzing the data from that and drawing conclusions. And then communicating your results so others can critique it. And so you might ask, what does that have to do with religion, though, the scientific method? Well, the fourth principle of Unitarian Universalism is the free and responsible search for truth and meaning. And we sometimes forget the responsible part, I will tell you that. But if we are true to our principle, we must evaluate what has come before us and ask whether it still holds meaning and whether it is still true based on new knowledge and new experiences. Unitarian and Universalist separately, before the merge, they broke away from traditional Christianity because they realized their analysis of the information yielded different conclusions to life than Christianity. You know, religions often tend to get caught up in the hypotheses all the time, right? Such as, is there one God, or three gods, or no God? Or is a communion consubstantiation versus transubstantiation? Whatever. Well, I know what it means, but that was years of seminary it took me to figure that out. Or what is or should not be a representation of God, right? Religion, though rarely tests those theories, right? One might say, how do you prove something like salvation? That is why I like the Kabir poem, where we heard earlier when he writes, what you call salvation belongs to the time before death, end quote. If one's hypothesis leads to violence and death of innocent people, then I think we need to rethink that hypothesis. But I think it is deeper than that. You will always come up with the wrong hypothesis if the question you ask is wrong. It all starts with the question. So if you ask, what happens after I die, or how was the world created, you can have many hypotheses, but there's no way to test it. So what would or should be the questions that religion should ask so that religion can be relevant to our lives? How can I be comforted knowing that the body I am living in is going to die? What is the purpose of my existence? What values do I want to live my life by? How can I gain wisdom of how to live in the world? How can I nurture myself? How can I help heal this broken world? These to me are really deep religious questions that we should be asking ourselves. These are questions that we can create hypotheses and test and spend a lifetime analyzing. However, these questions, these hypotheses can only be tested in a covenanted community where the search itself is valued. A place where ideas such as these can be tested and analyzed and shared and taught with our children, and where we can learn from our children as well, where truth is not one monolithic dictate, but an ongoing journey of discovery as the universe and our lives unfold. I don't know if any of you have seen them yet. We have new billboards out, actually. Well, I don't know if new is the only billboards I think we've ever had out. Actually, on a few places in town, it says, "Many beliefs, one faith, loving and caring for each other with open minds, willing to learn from each other and from multiple wisdom sources. That is the truth that I strive for. The truth of how to be and how to act in the world with the understanding that it is a journey of understanding." Unitarian theologian James Luther Adams famously said, and I quote, "By their groups you shall know them." End quote. Our liberal religion gives the world a different way to view the world, a way that is built on the foundations of ancient wisdom, but open to new knowledge. A way that asks us not only to respect the different opinions of others, but to recognize that all we do affects everyone else, whether it be in this community or the world at large. And Jesus said, "By their fruits you shall know them." Well, let us look at the fruits of our religion. A religion that has provided a welcoming community for all people. A religion that challenges us to think and rethink about our own religion. A religion that asks us to constantly learn new things. A religion that asks us to seek justice through love for all people. This is the religion I am called to. It may not be perfect by any means, like any organization. We have organizational struggles, but we cast a different vision that asks us to be hopeful and to find wholeness in this world, and not on some distant planet in a galaxy far, far away. Parker Palmer, the Quaker activist and author, I think summed it up best when he said, and I'll quote him here, "As someone who believes that there is a hidden wholeness beneath the very evident brokenness of our world, and somebody wants to say that somehow part of that hidden wholeness is love. Part of that hidden wholeness is our feeling for each other. Part of that hidden wholeness is a desire to make this thing work and to work it out together. The act of persisting in those fundamental beliefs that something better is possible. I think this is courage." End quote. And so I invite you to call yourselves to this courage. Day in and day out, one day at a time. This courage to believe that together we can make a better, more loving, more just world. And not just for ourselves, but for others as well. And the only way that we can do this, the only way that we can discover truth, is through acting together in love and community. This is my hypothesis that I am testing. And I am grateful to be with you for this journey of understanding. Amen.